Well, a very warm welcome. This week on My Body the Guitar, of course, I'm joined as ever by Karla Linn Merrifield. Great to see you, Karla.
Oh, Paul, as I always say now, great to see you and everybody out there.
So this week, a biggie, well, they're all biggies. Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, Bruce. The poem I'm going to read in a moment, just as a little back note, is probably one of the most autobiographical poems in the book, and it starts with the title, and the title is a long one. Anyway, so let me just so knowing that it's autobiographical in nature, and it incorporates what you have talked about many times, and how a single song can transport us in time back to when we first heard it. And the power of music to do that, where all of a sudden Jungle Land comes on, or for me with this poem, any of the songs from the Born to Run album, which came out in 1975, and is kind of, that whole album is kind of the memory trip of the years that I lived in New York City, or actually lived in Queens, worked in New York City. So let me just do it, okay? Long title. It's called From 164-84th Avenue, Queens, 1976, a soundtrack for 16100 Bay Point Boulevard, North Fort Myers, 2020. I got a bad desire this night, like someone born to run, thinking of a thunder road. I got this guitar and I learned how to make it talk to yours, from Jungle Land back streets to your 10th Avenue freeze out pad, playing with the young woman I once was. She's the one material I'd hoped, when the 59th Street was my bridge from troubled married waters to our meeting across the river. An innocent riding out tonight to case the promised land of my acoustic, your electric. 40 years later, I come face to face in yet another plexiglass display case at an exhibition. She's the one you played for me in the long ago. Esquire Telecaster Fender 1953-4. You played almost exclusively, early 70s until 05. Instrument of devotion before my very eyes again. Tonight, now, we know, Bruce, in the shadows of the grim melodies of these times, we know already a heap of pain has passed, and we're still pulling out of here to win.
As ever, I say this every time, it's just wondrous. What a beauty. There's so much in this, Carla, that we can discuss. I am a massive Bruce Springsteen fan, and there's so many. I mean, the title alone actually is that's the longest title. It's a great title.
Well, and the title is by bridging the gap from that address I lived in Queens to the address here, my winter address in North Fort Myers. And it was like, oh yeah, and it was my way of telegraphing like that, the two places and times in my life. So this poem takes you from not only one place to another place, but from 1976 to 2020. So it telegraphs that time span, which is then what the poem does in more detail.
Before we get into the poem, Carla, can I ask you what your preparation was for this poem in terms of research and things like that?
Um, this poem does not have a specific form, so I wasn't worried about rhyme schemes or number of syllables in a line and that kind of thing. It was, very much free form. And I had been listening to Born to Run album again as I was writing it, and it came fairly quickly. And the one piece of research besides listening to the album again was remembering that I had just seen, not too long prior to writing the poem, I had seen here we go again, the famous Esquire Telecaster in the plexiglass case at the Metropolitan Museum of Art Play It Loud exhibition. And you can kind of see, this is his quintessential guitar, and I got to stare at it and take my own pictures of it. But you can see this big chip in the guitar, and and if viewers could see this better, this is all the shellac is worn off in places, the finish on the guitar body. He played the heck out of this instrument for all those years, and it became then a focal point for the poem in bridging the time span between then and the now of the poem and how it ends. So that was actually going to the exhibit and seeing it, and then revisiting the image of it in my exhibition book, say, oh man, there's a guitar that really rocked for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. But so let's get into the poem, Carla, because I say there's so much. There's so much to it. It's fantastic. But that is just to say about the Fender Esquire. It was one of the very first guitars Fender produced. So 1953-54, and he played it till 2005. So I presume he got that in the late 60s. I would think early 70s. So the amount of playing and the amount of history, because I think sometimes when you play a really old guitar, it kind of inspires you to be. To be honest, the guitar actually sums up Bruce Springsteen for me, because it's hardworking, it's brilliant, and it's totally robust. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic.
It goes with his worn blue jeans and the bandana hanging out of his rear pocket. It's just that it's got the esprit of Bruce Springsteen.
Totally.
And I can't imagine. I would love to ask him, and maybe some music journalist has, what it felt like to retire that guitar after all that time, and does he ever pick it up again? It's just amazing that it was with him all those years.
Incredible.
Constant companion.
Shows you how well they were made as well.
Yeah. Yes.
But I could talk about that guitar all night. But the poem, Carla. So I'm digressing here. Let's go through the first. There's so much in the first verse, as it were. So let's look at that.
Okay, because that's one of the things that happens in the poem. If you look at it on the page, you can't tell so much when you're listening. But it goes from a very long stanza to a shorter stanza to an equal short stanza, and then it gets small, and then there's a smaller stanza, and then the last stanza is just a couplet. So the poem kind of condenses in on itself in terms of just how it looks on the page. But the setup for the poem is, I got a bad desire this night, like someone born to run, thinking of a thunder road. So that's coming out. That's kind of the mood I was in as I started off. I'm cluing, this is where I'm coming from, readers. Okay, I have this bad desire, and they're woven in the whole thing are lines from songs on the Born to Run album, and people who know it will pick them out. But I got a Bad Desire. I mean, Bad Desire this night. Someone Born to Run. There's the name of the album. Thinking of a Thunder Road, and Thunder Road is one of the big tunes, big hits from that album. So there's a setup, and then it goes into, I got this guitar and I learned how to make it talk. So, okay, narrowing in, I'm talking about guitar playing, all right? And what happens then is that opens up, he got a guitar and he learned how to make it talk. I got a guitar and I learned how to make it talk. And the guitars, he and I are conversing in the poem through our guitars. So I learned how to make it talk to yours. So I'm talking to his guitar, and then eventually he's talking back to mine as we play together in this poem. I mean, what a fantasy, huh? You know, I actually imagine sitting with my guitar and playing, you know, with Bruce. So
That's an incredible aspect to look at it from. I think that is something that I didn't expect when I saw it. I think that's a really beautiful way of approaching this poem on such an iconic character. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Bruce Springsteen.
I know one person, but she knows him
Bob Dylan.
as a neighbor, and some of the trash he pulls around her neck of the woods down in New Jersey. So,
okay.
You know, right. So no, and you know, there's this whole bullshit, excuse me, lately that, you know, he got arrested, you know, for drunk driving, and, you know, Jeep pulled the ad he did for Super Bowl. I mean, there's all this, you know, stuff going on in the background, and the charges ended up being dropped, which is kind of interesting, but, you know, that's a whole sidebar. But yeah, I mean, most people I know, just especially the women I know, just cream over the boss, you know.
Yeah.
Just, you know, because he's just so you know, real, and he was, you know, one of the big, well, he's maybe the biggest. I mean, you know, down to earth, you know, Bob Dylan, salt of the earth folk guitarist turned, you know, a little bit of a rocker, but you know, I mean, Bruce is this blue collar hero, and he's right, and that whole album is like the blue collar life that he grew up in, and that grittiness, you know, that was in that, and continues really to this day. I mean, he's still, you know, down to earth, and very much relating to his own humble background.
The reference to Jungle Land in there, Karla, and the next couple of lines. Are you referencing the song there?
I'm referencing the song. I mean, I think I hit in this poem. I'd have to go back and look at it again with an underline. I think I hit most of the songs from that album in the poem. So Jungle Land, and then okay. So I'm talking to your guitar, Bruce, from Jungle Land back streets, and there is a song about back streets, to your 10th Avenue freeze out pad. And 10th Avenue Freeze Out was one of the tunes. Okay, so I'm coming across the river, and we're going to hang out at his 10th Avenue Freeze Out pad, playing with the young woman I once was. She's the one material I had hoped. When the 59th Street was my bridge from troubled marriage waters to our meeting across the river. So I showed up at his pad with my guitar. They're you know, we're making them talk to each other, which is our way of communicating for this moment in time where I'm actually, you know, feeling young again. And, you know, so our meeting across, an innocent riding out tonight to case the promised land of my acoustic and your electric. So I've got my acoustic guitar, he's got his electric, and they're communicating. Instead of us talking, we're talking to each other via our guitars.
Could I just go back a bit, Karla? Because I love that when the 59th Street was my bridge from troubled marriage waters. That's such a Is that a reference to Simon and Garfunkel?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh
So they
yeah,
kind of
beautiful.
make that little cameo appearance in those two lines. And I literally, I mean, that's how I got from Queens to Manhattan, was across the 59th Street Bridge. So it's kind of, in my history, it's kind of an iconic image. And I'm sure that Bruce knew that song,
Oh,
and was familiar with it and would understand my lingo, in that respect.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's such. I mean, 59th Street. Actually, ironically, I mean, I've spent a bit of time in New York on ships and stuff like that, but I don't actually associate that with a street. I associate it with an album. I think, or with a Sound of
With a
Garfunkel. That's
song.
what I think of.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's a
amazing.
real bridge.
I'm sure it is. But in terms of the, the 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 structure of the sentences, were you looking to pay tribute to his kind of writing style? I mean, that is your opening line. I got a bad desire on this night. A bad desire this night is sort of Bruce Springsteen, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think I was. I mean, I was listening to it. So I'm sure, just as you're listening and I'm sitting there in my chair and I'm scribbling in my journal, the first draft of this, I'm sure I was moving to his rhythms. And it's a very long sentence. In fact, I'm looking at it again. That whole first stanza of, I don't know, 15 lines, maybe 12, is one sentence. And it was kind of like being on that roll when he gets going. And whether it's Jungle Land or even 10th Avenue's Freeze Out, which is a little more jaunty, but man, I mean, he can drive a song.
Yeah.
um, and you feel that vroom, you know, and
Well,
that's what I did with the sentence. I mean, I just caught the vroom that he brings to so many of his really, pulsing rock songs.
I was think I didn't actually realize that was yeah. Of course, it did. That's an enormous sentence, and it kind of
Yeah.
strikes me. I've seen him live once, and it was like, I mean, I've never seen a sentence that long before. And in the same respect of going to see Bruce Springsteen, he played for 3 hours, and I have never seen he raised the bar every time, and he played brilliant guitar. He slid across the stage on his knees. He sang beautiful a cappella. The band was absolutely stunning, and I think certainly with all his albums, particularly Born to Run, arrangement wise, he notches it up every time a little bit. Born to Run's one of the greatest musical arrangements of all time. Rather, apart from the song Thunder Road, Jungle Lands, the way he kind of structures his thing, it's kind of starts here and ends up in the stratosphere. Like this poem, it's the same time. I see the same type of structures with that. And so can we look at the second stanza, kind of 40 years later?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, 40 years later, I come face to face in yet another plexiglass display case at an exhibition. She's the one. You played for me in the long ago. So, so the long stanza, and then this one, where the intro phrase, 40 years later. Okay, time has passed. We're in a different place now. I signal to the reader. And there I am back at that exhibit, and because this poem is also in context of the whole book, if you were reading the whole book, you'd have, and we've talked about it before, I've mentioned this exhibit several times. I mean, it played such a big role in the formation of this book. And so there I am, all of a sudden, 40 years later, September 2019, at this exhibit, and there it is. There's that Esquire Telecaster, and I'm like, oh, my heart's beating, and I'm like, that's it. So this is kind of a transitional stanza that takes us, from back then, the Jungle Land days, living in New York, Queens, working in New York, to the present. And and then it follows up with the actual description of that Fender. So
it's so interesting. I think with that, I with that exhibition, because there's so many iconic guitars, and it's what strikes me is that those guitars are such a great, because on their own they don't make any sound. So
right.
it's what they enable people to express. Not only that, it's what they express and how that affects other people. It's a great, the guitar, any musical instrument, particularly the guitar, it's one of the greatest enablers of people to really express how they feel, a feeling that then resonates with, you know, um, with millions of people throughout the world. It's fabulous. The way it was inside him already. I think he just discovered it. And he's such a. I think also band wise, this you talk. I see a lot of community in this poem, and band wise, for sure. I mean, the fact he calls them the E Street Band. It's kind of a gang, isn't it? It's kind of, and all the players in the band. Max Weinberg isn't on drums, and Gary Tallett's on the bass. Everyone kind of is encouraged to play the hell out of every song. Clarence Clemens, is it that?
Oh God, yes.
That jungle, the solo in Jungle Land is, for me, is one of the greatest pieces of recorded history anywhere. I think it stops you in your tracks, and it's like, it's what he enables, and the fact that his name is on the ticket, but it's a band you're going to see.
And perfectly in sync, and just and having fun. I mean, that was part of it too. I mean, I've never seen him in person. I would love to, and I hope to. But you watch any of the videos of his performances with the band, and they're just so. And I know that happens to most bands, but I don't know. I mean, just that there's a saxophone in a rock band, isn't all that common. A couple guitars, drums, but and to have someone as powerful as Clemens playing sax is just, and they were just so. I think you got it. I think you nailed it when you said in community. That just, they carried their backgrounds with them and put that out on stage for all of us to join in.
It's a brave thing for him to put a saxophone in a band like that. I mean, it's brave in one sense, because once he starts playing saxophone, no one's looking anywhere else. He could be doing press ups and backflips,
Right.
but everyone's watching. He could dress up as Batman and fly through the air, but everyone is watching, particularly Clarence Clemens. I mean, he's so magnetic, and I think it's the fact that he doesn't. I don't think he takes himself too seriously. It's the fact that he can give other people the spotlight and be quite happy about it, rather than, it's not me. It's kind of the songs that do that. And in the next, the third stanza, Karla, could you just go through that one with the Esquire Telecaster?
Okay, yeah. A few details for the reader about the guitar. Esquire Telecaster Fender 1953, for which we talked about. You played almost exclusively, early 70s until 05. Instrument of devotion, before my very eyes again. And I think probably the most important word in this stanza is she. That this guitar, and so many other musicians have talked about their guitars as something feminine. You played almost exclusively, and then that word devotion, instrument of devotion. It was it wasn't just playing it all those years. It was like he was married in a way to this guitar. I mean, that's a long stretch of time to play one instrument so prominently, almost exclusively, over all those concerts, all those years. and all, I'm sure sitting around practicing, of course. And there it was, and there she was. So yeah. And of course, in the context of the book, I mean, it's called My Body, the Guitar, because I imagine myself, when I write these things, I imagine myself as being that guitar. And what if I were that guitar? How would that feel to be played?
Well, it's really interesting that he chose the Fender Esquire, because he could have played any type of guitar. But the Fender Esquire, it's really because it was developed initially for the country market, but it's kind of essentially two pieces of wood bolted together, as the Fender guitars are, with
I didn't know that.
yeah, it's kind of two pieces of wood bolted together. And it's a very simple design. Before Fender, Gibson had the glued neck and stuff. It was very much you might call a craftsman's instrument, whereas the Fender was quite a rebellious instrument in the time. That the publicity was like people on surfboards playing a Fender guitar and things like that, and it was very much the hot rod of the musical hot rod of the time.
Okay.
And the fact that I think he played a Fender Esquire, the Telecaster Esquire, so much is basically it's a very simple guitar. There's not loads of switches. There's two. Initially, it was one pickup. There's two pickups on his, I think, and it's got three on the selectors, three ways. So it's kind of on or off, really, pretty much. And I think that's the attraction is when he plays the guitar. He kind of, I haven't got the guitar ironically, but he kind of really he attacks it. He's kind of, there's some interplay. He's very physical with the guitar when he opens up with Born to Run, with Born in the USA, or wherever he does in his concerts. There's a real impact, and physically he's really getting stuck into the guitar, as it were. And I think that's the Fender Esquire, the Fender Telecaster is so iconic because it just lets people play the music. There's not millions of dials on it, and if you drop it as it's two pieces of wood bolted together, it's pretty, it's very durable. And the other thing I was going to say, ironically, about the early Fender guitars, is ironically it's such an international guitar because they were wired by Mexican housewives, basically.
No kidding.
In California, because they are fantastic instruments, but the original wiring was done by Mexican housewives, pretty much.
Right. Well, and that fits the whole Bruce gestalt of being, that blue collar, from the back streets, here we are in our jeans with our bandanas. It fits that aesthetic of his.
Fender kind of is like that, really, because Leo Fender had a quite a tricky time at first trying to get people. Dick Dale was one of the first people he gave his guitars and his amplifiers to, and it's kind of I think Fender's always a bit of an underdog for me. I think guitar wise, because it's in a nicest possible sense, because it's a beautifully crafted instrument, but in essence it's two pieces of wood bolted together and a pickup slapped on, and say, well, there you go.
Workmanlike. Yeah, it's workmanlike.
Yeah, and I think it kind of suits him really when he plays that guitar, and it's not very heavy as well. The Telecaster isn't a particularly heavy guitar, so when he's running around the stage, if he's got like a Les Paul or some delicate guitar, then it's a different thing altogether. And it kind of, but like I say, it's kind of with the Telecaster, it's a beautiful guitar. But there's loads of sounds in it, but it's very much kind of plug it in, and you're concerned with making music rather than flicking loads of switches and stuff like that. Yeah, just do it. Yeah, and it kind of and it looks great as well, doesn't it? I think.
Oh yeah, and when I looked at it in that case, I was like, you could almost. I mean, this is really far fetched, but okay, because here's this old guitar. You can see all the the worn finish, the scratches and everything. I could almost smell his perspiration on it. I mean, it was eerie to be standing. People are going by behind me and they're trying to get in. They want to see that guitar, and I just stood there and transfixed. And it was like, yeah, that's why he carries his bandana, because he's got to wipe it down, because he's been working. He's a working boy,
Yeah. It's so interesting with those players playing Fenders, because it's kind of it just, I think the thing about the Fender Telecaster, I think the first one was 1949 if I'm not mistaken, and he got like the Stratocaster behind you, he just got it right. Leo Fender got it right in 1949. 1951 for the precision bass, he got it right in 1951, and that Stratocaster behind you, it was 54 was the first Stratocaster, I think. 1954, it just, he got the whole thing bang on correct, and it's kind
and
of,
we're still buying them.
yeah,
And Fender, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think if I did a search through the whole book, probably the one brand name that comes up the most is Fender. And I think they're probably, I don't know, there have to be a dozen references at least to Strats, and maybe 9 or 10 references to Telecasters. I mean, it's just, and they're I mean, they're affordable. I mean, yeah, there are some real high ends, of course, and the signature models and that kind of thing, but they're kind of a go-to. I walked in when I bought this one. I walked into the House of Guitars in Rochester, New York, a venerable store, huge selection. And I said, okay, I'm here to buy a Strat. Where are your Strats?
yeah.
And they have like a dozen of them lined up in the case. Which color do you want, Karla? I mean, that's how I mean, that was just my, more evidence of just how popular they are. And there were a couple there. I said, how much does that one cost? I said, oh no, that's a little bit, but 9 out of the 12 or 9 out of the 15 that were lined up in the case were, this affordable, that Strat made in Mexico. All right, fine. But it's Fender's name on the guitar and their brand. And now they've branched out. I mean, we're getting off a little bit, but they've branched out. They're doing, I mean, the tuner on my cell phone is Fender, a Fender app. And they have, classes that are online, and it's astounding how much a piece, and I've never looked, but how much a piece of the guitar market they really have.
Massive. Well, I think I think pretty much like Bruce Springsteen, it's a game changer, because I look at Born to Run as one of the greatest albums, in my opinion, ever recorded. And he kind of got it for the whole world, spot on. In terms of, it's a little bit different in Britain in terms of popularity, but he's very popular, of course. He's massively popular. But in America, was he the kind of the man of the 70s, 80s, 90s, 10s? And I mean, he's been forever, isn't he?
Definitely of the 70s, I would say, without a doubt. When it came to rock, I mean, of course, we were listening to Brits, and we were listening, to Zepp and Dire Straits, but in terms of all American, born and raised, Bruce was, I mean, that's it, the boss.
Yeah.
I mean, that nickname goes way back in his career. So I would say, and one of the little ironies too about this poem, that it's been published in a British journal, which just tickled me no end, that here's this all-American rocker and his all-American guitar, and the poem finds a home in the UK with a marvelous journal called Orbis. So it's just one of the ironies.
Maybe we could link that in the description, if put a link into that to the website.
Okay.
That'd
all
be
right.
great. Yeah. That's and can we go to the final bits of the poem there, because it
Yes,
never
before
stops.
we run out of time.
No, it's brilliant. No.
It was a wonderful side journey. Okay, so here we are. I've been looking at this guitar. And then another change, okay, 40 years ago, that was one clue. Okay, reader. And then another time element, tonight. Okay, I'm bringing the reader at the last two stanzas, which is total 5 lines. Tonight, now, we know, Bruce, in the shadows of the grim melodies.
Sorry, I'll just turn it off.
It's all right. I'm not home. I'm not answering.
I'll cut that bit out.
Okay. All right. So we're in the here and now. Tonight, now we know, Bruce, in the shadows of the grim melodies of these times, we know already a heap of pain has passed, and we're still pulling out of here to win.
Brilliant. That's so big. I just think you really capture, for me, you really capture the essence of Bruce Springsteen with this poem. It's all the imagery. Just I can see it in my head as you're talking to this. The imagery just, it's like watching a film, like a verbal film, as it were. Or
okay. Well, good.
I think it's amazing. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Karla? Because we've talked about so much. It's so beautiful.
No, I think, I say something in the shadows of the grim melodies. And again, I mean, that's kind of an allusion in a way to the back streets that he sang about, from his kind of grungy, gritty youth in Asbury Park. But it also is kind of a reference, to the grim melodies of these times. In other words, these times in the context of COVID, without having to say that. And we're always, no matter where we are in time, there's always something going on in the world, poverty, war, planetary destruction, whatever it is. I don't have to say any of that. Each of us in our lives at some point have a moment, or a year or two or more, where we're in the shadows of grim melodies. And yet, Bruce is somehow able to lift us out of that, and realize, okay, a heap of pain, which is a phrase I think, that he would truly understand. It's very colloquial. Already a heap of pain has passed, and we're still pulling out of here to win. He gives us the will. When we're in one of his songs, he gives us this power to keep going.
Yeah,
he just conveys hope.
Well,
wherever he
does. The Rising comes to mind. That was his kind of 9/11 album, wasn't it? I mean, that's that's such an incredible album, isn't it? And the fact he called it The Rising and stuff like that, it's like, I think he means so much to so many millions, hundreds of millions throughout the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. The Rising. Yeah, I remember. Of course, I remember when that came out. It was just, order now. Boom. Because I mean, he was doing it then. One of the worst tragedies, in this country, with global implications, and he was trying to bring us out of that.
And there's definitely a gospel aspect to that album, and sometimes his performance, I always think there's a real gospel drive in there, and not bashing people over the head with any particular message, but it's uplifting. I think I find his music, and the fact that he did those albums with of Pete Seeger songs, "We Shall Overcome," I think was the album where he went back, and he's I think people love him because he's not a glitzy rock star, as it were. There's so much substance to what he does, and the fact that he did his Broadway show, where he sits down with a guitar or piano and just does a show in front of 200 or 300 people. Really, he's in a way he's almost he's almost a fender of musicians, because he's totally solid and just totally reaches so many different people with such a positive message. I don't, when he's interviewed, I don't see him being negative. I think he's unless he needs to be, but a very positive guy.
Yeah, I mean, just last month he sat down with former President Barack Obama, and they were like the boys together and had this fabulous conversation again, and it was the same idea, of a rising, we're gonna pull out of here to win.
Very, very, very clever writer. Born in the USA. It's a protest song, isn't it? I mean, it's really, it's such a from a poet's point of view. How would you talk about his lyrics, Karla, as a lyricist?
Oh, well, I mean, I think they're brilliant because they're just so gritty, and they're so laden with images. I mean, when you think about Thunder Road, I mean, you are there, and it's the the descriptions of the car or the motorcycle, or even in a song as kind of a ballad as sweet as My Little Town or My Hometown. I mean, he takes you places with imagery in his songs, and I think that's one of the most incredible things about his lyrics is how vivid they are, because he uses such strong imagery. It's just not love and hate and war or destruction or those kind of nouns and that okay, but what kind of war, or what's the street like in your hometown? I mean, he really fills in details that then make you, oh yeah, my hometown, and you start seeing your own hometown. So I think the bottom line, he's probably one of the most evocative lyricists that modern rock and roll knows.
Yeah, I totally agree, Karla. I think I love the poem. Everyone. I love everyone that you do. It's fabulous.
Oh, thank you. You're prejudiced.
No, it's brilliant because there's so much in these poems. I've read this quite a few times, and every time I've got a picture in my mind. It's almost like it's a verbal film that's going on. And when I'm reading it, I'm thinking, I can see the things going. When you're talking about the exhibition, I can see people kind of walking past these guitars in my mind and thinking, my God, that guitar it inspires people. I think it inspires people to write poems and stuff, about a guitar. It's brilliant, it's fabulous. Thank you so much, Karla. Like I said, as ever, this something we could talk about we could talk all night about this stuff, and I think
I know, and you didn't play your guitar tonight. So
I didn't really have anything to play, actually, because the poem kind of speaks for itself.
Okay.
But thank you so much, Karla, as ever.
Thank you, Paul.
Another day closer to getting the book.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Boss.
Bye-bye.
Bye.